Today's episode is going to be about doing what is best for you, which might seem super simple, but this is something I had to give myself a bit of a lecture about recently. And anytime I have to give myself a lecture about something, I feel like I need to share it with you guys in case it's something that you need to talk to yourself about as well. So stay tuned.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Susie Fevens.
Welcome back to the podcast. Yes, today I thought I would give you a lecture, but I'm not actually giving you a lecture. I'm just going to share the lecture that I gave myself. I have talked ad nauseum about having to change my business, reformat everything, move things virtual, shuffle what kind of offerings I am offering and whatnot. But this is something I'm still struggling with it a little bit because I really hate to let people down. And for the last 12 years, right up until March, I have been teaching very close to the same schedule. I've had to change class formats over the years, but I have been teaching 4 evenings a week, 3 mornings a week for most of that time, with some other things sprinkled in and out, sometimes a lot of other things sprinkled in and out. But I have done it pretty consistently. Like on Mondays, you'd find me in Woodville, Tuesdays, Waterville, Wednesdays, Berwick, Thursdays back in Woodville. Every weeknight evening, unless there was something going on, and that was definitely the exception and not the norm. And I've known for a long time that I was going to have to cut back, and the last few years, my plan has always been anytime a class naturally seems like it's ending, like class attendance is lower and it's not making money anymore, I will just let it go. I wasn't going to purposefully cancel anything. I was just going to let things naturally run their course. And when a class ended and it didn't look like it was going to start again, I just wouldn't replace it. Then, of course, a little thing known as a global pandemic came along and just shut everything down. And of course, initially we thought this was only going to be for a short period. Isn't that sweet of us to think that? And I was largely still teaching my same schedule, just at slightly different times. And then as things went on, I changed things up and I started doing live classes, but more during the day, and they were recorded so people could watch them later, yada, yada, yada. And then we came to the point where I realized or acknowledged that working all day, because I don't work a true 9 to 5, but I work almost the entire day. It's very unusual for me to take a weekday off. Sometimes I take Friday afternoon off, but that's because I work on Saturday mornings. I work very close to a 9 to 5. Usually it's a 10 to 5, 10 to 6, and then still teaching an evening class. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to work all day, then teach every evening. Like, that is not something that I can physically sustain. My body just cannot handle it anymore. I've put on a bunch of weight, and it is not because I've been sitting around not exercising, and it's not because I've been eating a poor diet. It's because of the stress on my body, and I can't do anything about it until I change that. So I realized that I didn't want to go back to teaching so many evenings. And I knew before I started to tell people, and then I started to try to ease people into it just to kind of get them used to the idea. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad because this is something that they always could depend on. And then one day, a month or so ago, I found out that somebody who has been a very good client over the years, and I would call them a friend also, they were not going to be able to come to my classes anymore. And it is not because they didn't like me anymore. It was just a situation that was going to prevent them from realistically being able to attend any classes. And at this point, I was back to teaching in person a few mornings a week, as well as teaching virtual classes Tuesday evenings, Saturday mornings, and then my other sprinkled ones in. But, I always assumed that when things went back to quote unquote normal, that person would be there. And then I found out that they were not. And I felt a little bit, I wouldn't say I was angry and I wasn't upset, but I was kind of like, I can't believe I'm not going to see them anymore. Like, I can't believe it. And then I thought about it and thought, you know what? I'm not going to see them because they are doing what's right for them. Again, it's nothing to do with my classes. It's just geographical and time situation. They're doing what they need to do for them, and I respect that. And I thought, if I can respect that for somebody else when they've disappointed me, why can't I allow myself to respect my own decision and knowing that I'm doing what's best for me, even though it's going to disappoint some people? So after that drive, because I was on a drive when I had this lecture with myself or conversation with myself, I thought, you know what, it is time. Up until then, I had sort of been telling a couple people here and there and hinting at the fact that things were going to be changing, but not really making any real public declaration of things are not going to ever be the same in my business. I'm changing it. I have to for my own health. I decided, no, it's time for me to tell everybody. So I did. And overall, the feedback has been positive. I know there's disappointed people out there, and I'm sorry for that. But at the same time, I've been very upfront about the reason why I'm changing things. Instead of working to live, I have been just working to work. Essentially, I love what I do. It makes it easy to work too much. It makes it easy to work too hard, especially when you know what you're doing is doing good in other people's lives. But what good is it if the good I'm doing for other people is doing harm on myself? And I listened to a podcast that same week. You know, things always are kind of serendipity that way. And it was not about business. It was actually about something else entirely. But they said, not it, if there's something wrong and you know that there's something wrong and you don't fix it, that's on you. That's not on anybody else. And it's not to say that there's something quote unquote wrong with my business aside from the fact that I've been working and putting my body through too much physical stress and not earning enough money at the same time. But it rang true. It felt true. Like if I know that what I'm doing is increasing my cortisol, is creating that cascade of problems, and I'm not doing anything about it, then obviously, like that, if you know there's a problem and you don't fix it, and then you just keep going on about it or wishing something was different or wondering what's wrong, well, you know what's wrong because you haven't fixed the problem. So I'm trying to be a little bit kinder to myself. And that is not something that comes naturally to me. I am more of a overdoer, push it through and get it done sort of person, as opposed to one who recognizes their limitations or what should be their limitations so that they can have more balance. I just do not succeed, and that is my body type, that is my personality type. And so I'm really trying to be better about that. Just last week, I launched for some VIP clients a virtual yoga and virtual body sculpt memberships. And I had hoped to record some new classes for them last week. And things happened, as they so often do, and I didn't get them done. And on Friday afternoon, I was just going to force myself to do it. I was exhausted. I was sore. I wanted to do some quiet work, some relaxing work to finish off the week and then head into my weekend. I was going to force myself to do it. And I said, Suzanne, this is exactly the problem. Your clients, who are all amazing, by the way, if you're listening to this, and I know some of you are because you're amazing like that, they don't need you to give them 4 new classes on a Friday afternoon. They're going to be just fine waiting until like Monday or Tuesday before they get new classes. There is a plethora of recorded classes already available to them. You can send them the links to some of those other ones. They can do those over the weekend if they wish. You do not need to be pushing yourself over the brink because you have that expectation of yourself. And that is the other thing. Nobody puts more pressure on themselves than I put on myself. And one thing I know about people is if I'm having this issue, other people are having this issue as well. So if that is you, if you are the person who puts most of the pressure on yourself, how can you relieve that? When you feel that you have this list of deadlines that are just weighing you down, which one of those actually needs to be done? Prioritize them on a timeline as to when they actually need to be done. I am sitting here right now and I have a to-do list of things that I would really like to get done today, but like it is 20 to 5 and I just do not see that I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more things done, including this podcast before 5 o'clock, so I can have supper, so I can teach this evening, because I have to teach this evening. It's just not going to happen. So I have to look at which ones need to be done. And I had a couple things that I needed to have done for tomorrow morning. So I did those. And they were not the most involved. They were not the things that I most wanted to get off that list, but they were the most time sensitive things. So sometimes we need to cut ourselves a break. And I think a great way to do that, and I need to go back to doing this myself, is making a master to-do list. And I'm sure I've talked about this in another podcast episode because I talk about the same thing all of the time. But create a master to-do list of all of the things that you want to get done, all of those little niggling things that you think of at 2 in the morning and then you forget about until the next time you think about it, maybe at 1 in the afternoon when you're in the middle of doing something else, and then you forget about it again. Create a list in a notebook, on your computer, on your phone, of all of those little tasks, and then each week pick a couple that you want to work on. You don't even have to complete them. Some of those tasks, some of those to-dos are going to be pretty extensive. So maybe sift through, see if there's any that are very timely that need to be done on a certain timeline, and then work on those. If not, if they're all just a bunch of things that you want to get done, one has no priority over the other, pick a couple to work on a week. Maybe you have a couple easy ones that you can blast through and get them off your list altogether, but don't make that list your regular to-do list. Make that your side to-do list that you can pick the items to put on your to-do list. Remember, your to-do list should only have 3 things that must be done on a given day. So today, I had 3 things that I had to get done. 1, I had to make ghee. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm taking an Ayurvedic course the next 4 days, and one of the things I needed to have in my house before the course was ghee, so I had to make that today. I had to deliver a book to somebody who had purchased a book, and I told them I was going to drop it off Wednesday afternoon, so I needed to get that done. I had to go to my osteopath appointment because that time is booked and paid for. I need to show up. I had a lot of other things that I wanted to get done and a bunch that I have gotten done, one of which is this podcast that I'm recording right now. Another one was a couple classes that I recorded this morning. And then the rest is stuff that I would like to get done, but does not actually have to be done today or even this week. Some of them will need to be done on Monday, but they can wait to Monday if I have to. Some of them are things that I am trying to pick away at to get a project completed. And you know what? I did a good amount of work on it yesterday. So if I don't get any more done this week, oh well, it's not like anyone is waiting around for it. And the last thing is something that I really would like to get done today, but it's not going to be a disaster if it doesn't. Chances are very few people are waiting around for you to finish the thing that you are most concerned with. Especially in my case, nobody is waiting around for these items on this list. If they do not get done today and they get done on Monday, nobody is going to care, except for me. And once again, it's pressure that I have put on myself. It's an expectation I have put on myself. It's not an expectation that anybody else has put on me. And I need to cut myself some slack. This brings me back to a quote that Jillian Michaels said. I'm not sure if it's her quote or if she just said it, stealing it from someone else, so I'm going to attribute it to her. And she said, if somebody was talking about your best friend the way you talk about yourself, what would you say to them? And in this case, it's not me talking about myself, but if my best friend's employer was expecting as much out of her as I'm expecting out of myself, what would I think about that employer? Well, I tell you, I would think that they were a crappy employer, that they expected too much, they had expectations that were way too high, and when it really boiled down to it, those things that they were making her do in overtime were not that important. They were things that could have waited. So if I would think that about the employer of my best friend, if they were being treated the way I'm treating myself, I'm doing this to myself, I shouldn't do it to myself. And if any of this is ringing true for you, whether you have a quote unquote traditional job, or you are a stay at home mother, or you are a work at home mother, or you're homeschooling, or you're working in an office, you're working in a store, you're working wherever, everybody's working at something. Okay, everybody's working somewhere. What are those expectations that you're putting on yourself? Are you putting too high of an expectation on yourself? Are you putting too much pressure on yourself? Are you stressing yourself out for no reason just because that is your personality type? And if the answer is yes, maybe it's time to start thinking about yourself in the third person and thinking about yourself as your best friend, as your child, as your spouse, as a family member. What would you think if someone else was doing that to them? Where do you need to make some alterations? And we've really gone on a tangent here from one thing to another, but it's still all related, and it's all based on me. It's all me. How I don't want to let people down. I expect too much of myself. And in the end, have done myself in because of this. Now, I don't want to make that sound so darn serious. There is not anything that I know of seriously wrong with me. I have some burnout. I have hormonal issues related to that burnout. I have some problems like that. It's probably the same problems that 80% of the people listening to this have. But there's still problems, and I still need to deal with them. So, that is where I'm going to leave this today. And your homework for this weekend is to really recognize where you are putting too much pressure on yourself and where you are putting the expectations of people in your life on you. What are you doing just because you don't want to let somebody else down, even though it's not doing you any good? You're not always going to be able to change those things, but sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. That is where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcasting app. And if you're listening in iTunes, go ahead and leave me a review. Even just a star review helps so much. And you can find me on Instagram at Susie Confesses and on Facebook at facebook.com/Confessions of a Fitness Instructor. And my virtual fitness and wellness studio is found at welluniversity.ca. That's WELL, well as in wellness. Have a wonderful weekend or wonderful day, depending on when you are listening to this, and I will talk to you next time.